Kept you waiting, huh? Welcome, everybody, to Drop Pod. This is episode 9. Should be episode, like 13, 14 by now? Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I know I've had a little lengthy hiatus. That was an oxymoron, wasn't it? I'm back. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and I want to thank everybody for, catching this episode in particular. I know that there are a lot of new people that are coming into the show, so this hiatus isn't really going to make too much sense to the likes of you guys, but I appreciate it all the same. Welcome, welcome. I'm Aegis. The thing that led up to the hiatus, there's no real excuse. We got caught up in some video games. There was an event going on during the start of the hiatus called Return to Drang Lake, which is a Dark Souls 2 event that happens every year, where everybody populates the server. It's a community-ran event, and I find these events very important for the longevity of these games that don't really have too much of a shelf life past a certain points of you grinding it out. But it's really cool to see people come back, take a fresh step into the game if they're new, or just come back if they're a veteran. So it was cool to see. There was also a lot of just laziness on my part. I like I said, there's no real excuse. I was just lazy. We're back now though, same bat time, bat channel, bat place. If there is a viable excuse, is that the month of March I was preparing for a move, and the move finally happened. I'm in my new place now, new setup, new me. The move was fine. I went from North Las Vegas all the way to the south side of Vegas. It's practically a different city down here compared to North Las Vegas, literally. But the move was fun. No longer hearing the drones of jets flying around the entire day. And it's just overall more quiet, which I guess helps me out a little bit. I want to thank everybody in the Discord, first and foremost, for keeping up with me during the move. A lot of you were very, very curious on the extent of the move, but it wasn't too serious. Just one end to the city to the other. I wanted to talk about the Outriders launch. Outriders has been out for a week now. That's excluding the demo, obviously, but it's been out for a week now as of this recording. Week and some change. During the time of this recording, there has been a patch that finally went live. Apparently, people are not too happy. I have not read this patch just yet. I will do once I actually get back on Outriders. I've had a little bit of a break. It's just I'm not bored of it, but it's not gripping me like I thought. But I'm not bored of it, which is a weird thing to say. The game is fine. I was hoping for a little bit more out of an outfit like People Can Fly, which they worked on Gears of War Judgment, and I thought we were going to get something similar to that, but an ARPG. And the game's okay. It's a little bit... there are some features that are missing, and I'm sure if the features that were missing were in the game, I would probably come back right now. Certain things like Transmog, I think Transmog is a very important feature in today's ARPGs, especially when these ARPGs are more of a numbers game. You sit there, you pick up an item, and you're just using it because the number was bigger than the previous number that you had on. You're not using it because it's cohesive with your build or what you want to run. You're using it because the number dictated that you should use it. And when you do this, and when you have it set up like this without a way of customizing your character beyond just physical attributes, you tend to start looking like a clown. You're wearing the stat piece that had 8 billion defense on it, and it looks dumb. It's just some piece of cloth that's like sticking out of your back like it's taped there. The rest of your gear looks pretty cool aside from that chest piece. And there's no way to change that because Transmog isn't in the game. So it's just weird. It's weird that they had the foresight of adding things like sets and set bonuses, and then did not include a transmog option. I'll have more to say once I release a review for Outriders. This will be further down the week. Just storyboarding it right now, and just this is the first like review that I've done for the Helljumpers channel. So, do want to get it right on my end. Just talk about my points and leave it at that. Like I said, the game is okay. It's not gripping me like I thought. I'm not bored of it, and eventually I'll come back to it when time dictates. Certain things that I was going to bring up in the review is just, I feel like boss fights have some unnecessary cutscenes that are attached to them, and I just feel like a lot of the cutscenes in the game are very unnecessary. If you have played Outriders, you will get what I mean. If you played the demo to Outriders, you will definitely understand what I mean. It will come up against a boss, and this boss, for whatever reason, has a cutscene to indicate that they're about to go into the next phase of the fight. Instead of just having that just play out in game, because the cutscenes, every cutscene in the game is rendered in engine. So I don't understand the necessity for the cutscenes. You're taking control away from the player, especially when it comes to like planning for the next phase, and you're watching the boss probably sink back into the back of the arena or sink under the arena and then come back out in another area. But instead of having that all play out, you're doing that through a cutscene, taking control away from you so you can actually get that prep in, which is, it just takes me out of the loop a little bit. I really don't want to give any spoilers, so a lot of this is just going to be saved for review purposes. The loot. The loot to me feels very uninspired. I have said this countless times. There's armor that will drop in the game, and you'll pick it up. You're only using it because of the numbers issue, as stated earlier. Once you get towards the end game, you start getting some sets that kind of look okay, but it's nothing you haven't seen before. Some skulls that are affixed to the armor. It's just all drab to me for a sci-fi RPG. I was expecting a little bit more out of it. The guns feel nice, or the gunplay itself feels nice. You have abilities. Some abilities seem a lot better than others. I know a lot of people picked Pyromancer, which is one of the classes you can pick. And people start with Pyromancer and don't really know how to work it at the beginning. But then you go towards the later stages of the game and it seems a lot better. Especially once you start getting your rounds. I thought the rounds were going to be very lackluster during the demo, but once the game came out, I'm a Technomancer right now. Or I started with Technomancer in demo, I continued Technomancer into launch. And we can use Blighted rounds, and I'm like, Blighted rounds don't seem too good. At least in the demo, it seemed like the cooldown was a little too long, but now that the game is fully launched, you can use Blighted rounds, and you can extend the duration of it. There's a lot of cool things with mods that you can do to increase the uptime of Blighted rounds. And it just makes the experience pretty cool when you're able to augment your abilities further from your gear. So I thought that was pretty cool. The gunplay is good. The abilities are good, though some feel kind of niche and unwanted. And my biggest complaint is just how empty the zones look. You go to one set piece to another, just like Gears of War. You'll go to one set piece to another, fight some guys, go to another set piece, fight some more guys, and then that's it. The environments look so bland to me. I cannot sit here and really tell you. If you were to put a side-by-side image from Outriders and another game, I wouldn't be able to tell which was Outriders. That you can put, Gears of War and Halo side by side. These two games have things that show what their image is. But Outriders doesn't really have anything that's like iconic or stand out to the game, aside from, well, I guess their logo. But even then, I couldn't say for certain if what I'm looking at is the Outriders logo. It's just that that's the most ideal, scenario is that, okay, if you were to put out a logo, I could possibly pick out Outriders from the logos that you had put out for me to look at. Outriders, it has a long way to go. I'll have more to talk about during the review. On my Twitch channel, where you can catch me playing video games live at twitch.com/Aegis_CXVII. I'm pretty sure I got that right. If I didn't, it's going to be in the description anyway. Give it a click. I love it when folks say hi, especially when I'm live. On there, I've been playing a lot of Halo recently. As of the Season 6 launch, Raven is called, which brought in a bunch of the stuff from Fireteam Raven. Some of you have probably not even heard of Fireteam Raven. So for those of you that don't know what Fireteam Raven is, it is a pretty massive coin-operated arcade machine, like something you would see at like a Dave & Buster's or Chuck E. Cheese even. And it's basically a turret-mounted arcade game that you would have seen in one of these, restaurants. And you go around, and it takes place during the events of Halo CE, the OG game that started it all. And while Master Chief is doing all of his crazy stuff during Halo CE, Fireteam Raven, which is a squad of ODSTs, are just shooting stuff in the background with the turret-mounted arcade setup. The game is actually, it's not bad for an on-rail shooter. Definitely captures the feel of Halo. Why did they decide to release an arcade cabinet instead of a full-fledged release? I will never know. Maybe we'll see a full release of Fireteam Raven for PC or even consoles at some point. I mean, it happened with Typing of the Dead, right? Some of you don't even remember what Typing of the Dead is. Some of you weren't even around when Typing of the Dead was a thing. Okay, so we're doing this again. But Typing of the Dead released in 2001 on the Dreamcast. I remember I had this game, and all it is it's more akin to a remake of House of the Dead. House of the Dead, I know some of you weren't around for that shit. It's an arcade cabinet, same as Fireteam Raven, and it was an on-rail shooter. But instead of shooting zombies in terms of House of the Dead, what you are instead doing is typing. And I thought that this was a really cool thing to just kind of get people into typing. The premise was good enough. I'm sorry, I laugh now because the tagline of it was survival horror / educational, while House of the Dead was just a survival horror that was on rails. And I just find that funny how far these games have come. If you remember this game, please let me know what you think, because I think Typing of the Dead is just one of those. That's iconic right there, and I hope that something like that comes back, where they just like completely change up one game and then they just turn it into something else. They kind of made the game a little goofy from House of the Dead to Typing of the Dead, obviously. In House of the Dead, the characters were holding guns, and they would go around with guns, and in Typing of the Dead, they have a Dreamcast affixed to their back, and instead of the gun, they have a keyboard. And I just think that's hilarious. So it's a little comical. They did a iOS port somewhere around 2012. I didn't even know that was a thing until now. Let me know what you guys think of Typing of the Dead if you've played it. I remember this game not too vividly, but I remember it nonetheless. I thought it was a neat little thing that Sega was trying to do. I also thought the Dreamcast was something a little neat that Sega was trying to do. Maybe they should bring that back, no? But, yeah, I'll release the Halo Saga at some point. It's just me going through every entry in the mainline series. That's Halo 1 through Halo 4, Halo 1 being CE. And I just go through the game at my ultra-rapid pace. I'm playing the game on normal, because on the stream, I'm just going down the line of playlists. If you've never played Master Chief Collection, there are playlists that you can enter, and these playlists will take you through some of the entries in the series. One of these playlists might have you fighting in every single mission that had a vehicle in it. So it could just go from Halo CE to just Halo 2 throughout the playlist, which is pretty nice. It's pretty fun so far this season. They really haven't changed up anything too heavily. It's just Halo at its base value, but they've added a lot more customization to Halo 3, which I'm very impressed. All of the new items that they added for these games that were never meant to have like extra armors or cosmetics, and then here comes 343, and they've added more stuff to these older games, which extends the shelf life of these games pretty heavily. Make sure that you guys continue to play MCC if you are playing MCC. The game is just only getting better as time progresses. Mods for Halo CE are now able to be played via co-op, which was not available during the original Halo Custom Edition on Windows. And it's cool to see it implemented now because people are able to play things like Project Lemuria, which is one of my favorite Halo CE mods that pretty much changes the scope of the game. It's pretty much its own game, but it's cool to see that people are coming back, trying out these mods, or even if it's a custom game that you've never played before, it's just cool to see that the servers get populated for those events. Well, with Halo out of the way, though, I did want to bring up PoE 2. PoE 2 standing for Path of Exile. We had another reveal stream the past weekend, and it's shaping up to be a really cool game, man. If you have not yet played Path of Exile, you can do so. It is free. Try it out if you're into ARPGs. I cover a lot of ARPGs on my Twitch, and I will start doing so a little bit more on the Helljumpers channel. But PoE 2 is shaping up to be really solid. The reveal stream that they had over the week was they showcased Act 2, which takes place in a desert, and I always loathe these desert environments in ARPGs. I just feel like they're so bland and you never know where to go. But they did a pretty good job with this environment. It looks so neat. It looks really cool. The combat looks so fluid. And it just shows how far this game has come from when it first got unveiled in the early 2010, or the when did it get revealed? I think it was 2010. I would need a fact check on that. But the game didn't look anywhere near as good as it does nowadays, and especially with this full-fledged sequel coming out, it just looks so good. Everything that they showed in that reveal looked amazing, from the new spear weapon types. I love spears. And these new spear weapons, they just look really cool. They have an engage and they have a disengage, so it just makes the combat look very mobile. You're just watching a guy leap into a pack and then he's out of the pack immediately. The game looks very slow-paced compared to PoE. When I say PoE, I just mean the first one, which I appreciate. I think that the current scope of Path of Exile is just way too fast. Like, people are just playing that at Mach 8 instead of just absorbing the environment and just playing it generally more slow. It's kind of bad because every build that's top tier for the game, you have to run it at such a high speed, and I think it alienates people that shouldn't be clicking all too much, maybe due to health issues. But if you want to perform really well at PoE in its current state, you have to play at such a high speed, and it's just awful. But I think that they really toned it down for PoE 2, and it's going to be interesting to see how it kind of feels once we can actually get a hands-on, at least demo, something of the sort where we can actually just play it, if not just release the game right now. Something that was really, really good that they mentioned was that any microtransaction that you have purchased from Path of Exile 1 will be carried over to Path of Exile 2, and I was very worried because I think I sunk something crazy into Path of Exile. I think I sunk like 450 into it, which is it's not too bad considering that you're supporting the game and the development and the life cycle of the game that you enjoy. And I would continue to do so. It's not like I sunk 400 in a matter of days. This is over years of the game's life cycle. But it's good that they're not just going to deprecate the purchases that you've made, which I've always been worried about. Say a game as big as Counter-Strike Global Offensive gets a sequel, because we have Source 2, and I think there's a lot of cool things that you can do with the new Source 2 engine that I don't think Valve has implemented in Counter-Strike Global Offensive yet. But let's say that they get down to porting Global Offensive to Source 2, and they just go, what if we just made a new game altogether? What happens to everybody's cosmetics from that game? Do we just... you don't reimburse that. How are you going to reimburse? Some people, sunk coin into that game. Like a rip of money for knife skins. And it's just so crazy the way that the community handles, these transactions. But what happens to your items? It's kind of a weird thing to think about. But in the event of a Global Offensive, it would just be nice to somehow port these cosmetics into the next game, like PoE is doing. It's crazy that it's sometimes just a simple solution, but that right there solves a lot of issues that I was going to have. Aside from PoE 2, PoE 1 is going to shape up to look pretty good. They've done a massive rework to the way that items drop in the game. I know some of you don't even play the game, but I'll try to keep this brief. There's a massive rework to the way items drop in the game. It's you'll fight a boss, let's say, that most of the time in the previous expansions you wouldn't have even given a tenth of a fuck about. You would just fight it because you needed to in order to progress, and then that was it. But now you can actually sit on a boss for a bit, farm it out. That way you're actually getting some loot out of it. If you know that a boss like Piety is going to drop some stuff, you should probably fight Piety a little bit more. Kitava, kind of the damage check before you head into maps, which maps are the endgame content for Path of Exile. You would fight Kitava just once just to get into maps, but now you can sit on Kitava for a bit, fight him maybe 3-4 times, get some pretty decent loot that gets you prepared for the endgame. And I think that's important, that you should make the base content relevant. Make the base content relevant, and I think a lot more people will enjoy the scope of the game a lot more, especially for these newcomers to the game. This lowers the ceiling a little bit. That way everybody can at least get in, get some loot, do what they gotta do. We will be streaming Path of Exile coming up next week. Once this we will be streaming Path of Exile this week for you guys once this episode airs. It's still next week for me during the time of this recording. I was going to stream Diablo 2 Resurrected, but my alpha key never came. I was very sad. I was hyped. I thought it was going to come, and it didn't. We still got the beta, and there's still another alpha that's on the way. But from what I've seen of the current alpha, it looks very good. I'm a little bit worried about the way that the character handles at this current time. I don't know if it's a issue with just how they're layering the remake on top of the original game, and I think it's just a limitation of how the characters worked in the original version of Diablo 2, but it looks really good. Not much I can really say on that. It looks good. Combat looks good. The abilities look nice. If you just looked at Diablo 2 right now, you'd be like, wow, that it still holds up today. A lot of games take inspiration from Diablo 2 in particular, and this particular remake's very important to me. As a lot of you know that keep up with me, you know that Diablo 1 was the very first game I've ever played. So, we see a remake like this come around, it's very important that they get it right. And I'm just glad that the folks at Vicarious Visions are handling this one, and it wasn't just Blizzard in-house, because I do not trust Blizzard in-house, I am sorry to say. Not after Warcraft 3. More on Diablo 2 once I get at least a modicum of a key out of this. If I can even play a minute of that, I could die. I'd be alright. Dreadex Collection. This is for my people that follow me for horror stuff. I will be playing the new Dreadex Collection. It launches this month. Dreadex Collection is a thing I usually save for Halloween. It started last year, and it was just a really cool thing to play through all of these collections of games. What it is literally just that, a collection of games that are made by different indie developers that do horror stuff, and they just throw it into basically like a party bag, and you're just playing through all of these different games from all of these different developers. This is their third installment, The Hunt. I think it's like winter themed, but it's going to be cool to really see how that goes. A lot of good horror stuff coming out. You got Resident Evil Village on the horizon. You got this Dreadex Collection to worry about. Little Nightmares 2. Some really good stuff. I wanted to talk about an article that I saw earlier this morning while I was drinking my cup of coffee, and I was thinking about this. I was like, why is Assassin's Creed no longer considered a stealth game? And I saw this article during passing. A developer at Ubisoft, Desilets, hopefully I pronounced that right, suggests that developers have a hard time recreating the appearance of a stealth game because it's a AAA game, and he says, and he quotes, "It's just a money issue, man. It costs a lot to make, so you need to make sure that a lot of people will appreciate it." And I can kind of see that. The way he's trying to word this is that because stealth isn't in the best of areas, like, we haven't seen a strategy game in years. Not a full-fledged strategy game. We've seen strategy games get updates, but we haven't seen a strategy game come out that really, has nailed it home. We get a Total War game, like every couple of years. But we haven't seen anything that's like, oh man, this is bringing strategy back. Stealth is in the same boat. When we lost Hideo Kojima at Konami to the Great Purge at Konami some years ago, a lot of that stealth stuff died out. We haven't heard a peep about Splinter Cell during that time. I haven't heard a peep from Metal Gear during that time because Survive flopped as hard as it possibly could have. I really haven't seen much from stealth games. I remember we had Styx, and I was hoping that Styx would kind of be around right now, because Styx is a really good stealth game. If you're really into stealth gameplay, Styx is really enjoyable, and I just wish that they would get back to it. I don't know what's stopping them from doing so. Hopefully the studio's still up, because I really enjoyed that gameplay. And I just enjoy stealth in general. Thief was really fun back before the reboot of the series. Like, Thief is, it still holds up today. If you want to go back and play some Thief, you can do so. Even Hitman, to a degree, right? Hitman Contracts, Blood Money. Really good stealth mechanics. Assassin's Creed. Really good stealth mechanics in Assassin's Creed. It's just not a lot of people stuck around for Assassin's Creed. Probably because at the time the game was way too long. I'm talking about the very first one, by the way, but the game was really long. Too much area, and it just wasn't concise enough. But I really enjoyed the gameplay, and I think that stealth is just really fun. I think Black Flag really did it well with the stealth mechanics. But it's just weird. It's weird that a developer is just coming out and saying, yeah, it's a money thing. If we're gonna release something right now, it needs to do supremely well. Like, we cannot fuck around. But what other genres have been kind of forgotten about, languished? You don't see, MOBAs doing too well because you already have the big two, right? Between Dota 2 and League of Legends. You have Smite. A lot of people play Smite, but Smite's not, Dota 2. Smite's not League. And you also have, the name eludes me, the Blizzard version of both of these games. And I'm actually very fond of that one. I just can't even remember the name of it. Heroes of the Storm, by the way. I had to have a good think about that one. Heroes of the Storm. In Heroes of the Storm, I think that was just straight up abandoned, right? Like, you don't even see the hide nor hair of a game like that in this day and age. So, surprisingly enough, I mean, things like simulations died out, right? Nobody's really too interested in a simulation type game. They're okay to watch from time to time, but to play them, especially if it's like a life simulator, it's like, oh man, do I really want to go through all of this right now? Think things like points and clicks kind of died out too after Telltale ended their Walking Dead series. It's kind of neat to see and kind of harken back to these sort of games, though. You know, Tales from the Borderlands, that was a pretty interesting one. You have on-rail shooters like House of the Dead that we were talking about just earlier. And in general, just more arcade-style shooters like Bulletstorm. Bulletstorm was really good. What happened to Bulletstorm? Remember that? Bring that back. Arcade shooters are still good. Time to time. Unreal Tournament. Quake. Quake fathered a lot of FPSs as we know them now. Better put some respect on Quake's name. But, I mean, these games don't tend to do too well, and then we don't really see too much from them, especially if it's not a battle royale or a shooter. I think people just don't really care, right? It's unfortunate, but the numbers don't lie. I think as a counterpoint to what D. Soleil said, there are games that are coming back. A lot of single-player games are making a huge comeback. I mean, you had God of War, that did extremely well. They didn't expect God of War to do that well, and it did. Right? Last of Us Part 2, even though a lot of you say it's bad, did pretty well. You just have even the Spider-Man game, all of these exclusives to PlayStation, by the way. But all of these single-player experiences, they've done really well for themselves, and we should bring those back. Bring those back to the forefront. I think Assassin's Creed could still do well as a stealth game. I mean, it at least try it out. Give one entry to stealth. I think the way that they're doing this now, where it's like a mythological type of RPG, where you shoehorn in the mythos of a certain culture, it's just kind of, I think it's kind of overplayed. And once we're going to get this feudal Japan game at some point, and they're just going to shoehorn in a lot of tropes, and it's just, of any game that would do well as a stealth game, it would be a game set in feudal Japan, right? I don't know, Ubisoft. Better fix it. Fix your game. This is a weird time to mention this, but let me know what you guys think of my mic quality in this episode compared to that of the previous entries. I'm using the Elgato Wave 3 for this recording. And so far, I'm impressed by the quality. I think it sounds pretty nice. And I don't have to fiddle around with any software like I did for the Siren Elite, which is... I love the Siren Elite, I really do, but it was really hard to get that up and going and just sounding right, and I still couldn't get it. I just sounded so muddy compared to this. I think I sound a little bit more clear. I lost a lot of my bass, though, with this mic. I don't know why I'm talking about this in this sort of manner in a podcast to boot, but let me know what you guys think. I appreciate it. I really do. A lot of you guys don't really give me too much hate, which I appreciate. Aside from that, another Ubisoft topic I had was the fact that if you play Ghost Recon Breakpoint, I was expecting this game to kind of die out. I think a lot of it could have been fixed. And in fact, they did fix it. It's just that it should have launched the way that it is now. If it launched the way that it did now, it would probably do really well. I like to call Ghost Recon a casual military sim. It's for people that, see Arma footage and they're like, that looks fine. I don't know if I really want to play that, but that looks cool. But you can go into Ghost Recon and kind of get your military fix in that format. But Ghost Recon is going to have 2 major updates for this year. So be prepared for that. I think that's huge for the game. Again, the damage is already done. And that's all I can really say. The damage is done. You released it in such a abhorrent state. I think and I just hate this whole philosophy that Ubisoft has with things like time savers. You have made something so artificial with your grind to the point where you felt the need to sell the consumer a product that it doesn't need in the way of a time saver. These time savers could be materials needed for crafting, general skips for the game so that they don't even have to play it. Things like uncovering the map, for instance, showing you where the best items are off the bat. You're having a price tag on things that are so rudimentary and fundamental to certain games. You wouldn't see that in no Crash Bandicoot. You wouldn't see that in no Banjo-Kazooie. Somebody putting out, a Prima strategy guide is different. So they're trying to sell tips, literally a stratagems on how to get past the game. You're selling people a way to skip the game, which is crazy. So why design a game around that? Like, I would just toss that. You guys make more money than anything. Toss that out. Toss that philosophy aside. Stop shoehorning in. If you know that it's going to be an issue, why even design it? It just doesn't make any sense. And it's like I try to wrap my head around it, but I can't. You have designed something with the intent of people wanting to buy and out, and I don't get that. Stop it. Expect more of this. I'll talk about these updates as they come because I really wanted Ghost Recon to do well. I really did. It was one of my games I was looking forward to during its release cycle in 2019. And I remember we were in the beta, we as in Steven and I from Jumpers. And I was really excited for Steven to play Breakpoint with me because I want him to try out these mil sims. And I get him to try a mil sim, and so far we've been batting 1,000. Breakpoint did not help much. And it's kind of sad because I see a lot of people have like really fun with the sandbox of Ghost Recon when they're just with their buddies and they're screwing around with whether it's the vehicles or the guns, and they're having a good time. But then we get into it and it's like, man, it's releasing like this. They thought it was a good idea to release a game like this. That's crazy. The game does a lot better now. I suggest everybody try it if you have Ghost Recon, obviously. Do I recommend buying it? Yeah, it's doing a lot better than it did during its launch. If you skipped on this game because of the atrocious launch cycle that it had, come back. Try it out. Do I give it a 5 out of 5? Obviously not. I give it a 3 out of 5 for the way that it released. maybe a 3.5 now. I mean, that's not saying much because the damage is done. The player base is kind of divided, and I just think the way that they have this game set up is it's just not too good. It doesn't breed casual milsim to me. It breeds a type of RPG open world type of thing that it just really didn't need. But we'll see how these updates kind of change it up. These are major updates, meaning that it could rework an entire system if it really has to, so we'll see. As far as that goes, last thing I really want to bring up is Diablo 4. You guys know I'm a huge Diablo fan by now. We are not anticipating Diablo 4 this year, which is bad. And all we can really say that it's coming out soon, and that sucks. We were supposed to expect it by the end of this year, but COVID happened. And because of COVID, can't really get around that. I did want to talk about this briefly, and I think we'll end it here. It's a good stopping point, I suppose. I want everybody to just really stay safe, and I can't ask that enough. You guys know that I live in Vegas, and COVID here, it's really detrimental on the town because this town is dependent on people visiting and coming through and, you know, spending money over the weekends and just coming around and having a good time. This pandemic really set in motion, like, people really take what they have for granted, and that's awful. A lot of people are now getting these vaccines, and if you are, kudos. If you're on the fence, just make sure that you're staying safe out there. If you really don't want the vaccine, just make sure that you're doing everything you can to be a swell enough person. You know, don't put anybody else in harm's way. If you know that you're sick, just stay home. Like, what are you doing? Why are you even out? What's going on? Wear your mask. That shouldn't be such a hard thing. I remember at the beginning of this, people were like, "Oh, but I can't breathe. There's no breath control with this mask, a surgical mask that doesn't have any infliction on your breath control." It's strange. I just want to bring this up because I finally got introduced to one of my neighbors, and she was pretty nice, and she was like, "Yeah, so my granddad had to move in with us recently, and this was while I was grabbing the mail, but my granddad, not my granddad, her granddad had to move in with her. Um, he's nearing his late 70s. He got the vaccine, and as a side effect, they're saying that he can no longer walk. And I'm not trying to scare anybody. I mean, he knew the risk of, you know, getting it, but apparently, from what she told me, that he took it really well. He said that he lived his life to the fullest, and he's retired now. So, you know, thank God on that front. But he was like, this is just to make sure that at least I'm protected, and that's, you know, more power to him. I don't want anybody, you know, especially not in the Discord or even the comment section here. Please don't get into a huge what if battle. I really don't want to see a turf war fight over the vaccine. If you get it, again, more power to you. If you don't get it, all I'm asking is that you stay safe. Stay safe in general, all of you, but stay safe if you're not getting it right now, or you just don't have access to it right now. Make sure that you're doing everything in your power to make sure that everybody else is okay around you. My dad had dated this girl for like the year, and that shit wasn't going to work out. But COVID was just starting. This guy had brought COVID from wherever he went into New York, and then people in New York got it, and then some guppy in New York said, "Oh, I gotta get the hell up out of here," started going westward, started expanding that, and that only continued further west. And I remember this girl. I was sitting in the car with her one day, and we were just driving. I think I was going to my folks that day, but we were driving, and she starts telling me that You know, if my folks get it, sorry. And I'm like, is that your attitude with this? Like, just sorry, that's it? It's like, I love them, but I mean, if they got it, I mean, it's just their time. And I'm like, dude, you cannot be serious right now. There is no way that you are real. There's no way that this isn't a joke. That's crazy. Yeah, don't just be a good person. That's all. Just that's all I got to say on that. I don't want a turf war. I don't want anybody just, you know, commenting that they, you know, that don't do it. The government has some mind control juices in there. They're gonna go in there and take all your money. None of that. Just be a good person. Make sure everybody around you is safe. Take care of yourself first and foremost. If you're sick, read a book. Listen to Drop Pod. Listen to Drop Pod while you're sick. Why not? Listen to Drop Pod in general. Listen to all 9 episodes on loop. Speaking of 9, I will have a bonus episode somewhere in the middle of the week. I will not make a habit of this, but this was just for the case of I was on a hiatus. So expect Drop Pod 10 within the same week. And thank you everybody for tuning in.